If you want to start a business or be an entrepreneur, I need you to watch this video. Because today I'm going to tell you a story about the single hardest thing I've ever had to do professionally. And that is make a phone call to my best friend who invested in my business and tell him that the business failed and I lost all his money. I gotta start this from the beginning. I'm not gonna go into depth or detail about my fitness center, why it failed and all that. I'll do that in another video. If you wanna hear the story and see me really cry, down below, say, yo, Alvin, tell us the story of why your fitness center failed. So, overview, it goes like this. I've always wanted to own a fitness center. That was my only dream from the age of 12. I told my grandfather, I'm like, yo, I want to do this. He's like, great. Remember, he said, feed your ego or your family. Pick one. All right, we did that video. You want to hear something funny? Real quick? That whole video that I did talking about like Dear Bud Light, I filmed that video 2 weeks before that actually happened. And so I just used that title because I thought, you know what? This applies to the situation. I know it's going to be searched. And so that video wasn't intended to be talking about Bud Light. It was just about a business lesson, but Bud Light needed to hear it. Anyway, if you missed that video, I'm going to link to it down below. Very important point that I made in that video. You need to hear me. Now, it's funny because a lot of people, their individual biases, really watched that video and heard me say different things. Somebody was like, oh, I'm glad you don't think black people should be killed. I'm like, what? Huh? What? If you have no idea what I'm talking about, feed your family or your ego, basically it boils down to this. Shut the fuck up and sell shit. I need to make t-shirts for that because that is honestly what you need to do when it comes to business. Anyway, I'll link to that video down below. But from the age of 12 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to own a fitness center because of how incredible I felt when I went to the gym. Little backstory, rewinding a little bit more, I grew up with 2 abusive stepfathers. And they weren't physically abusive, like they didn't punch me or anything, but mentally, they did a number on me. My self-esteem was literally like in the gutter. But when I went to the gym, I felt like a king, right? Everything that was happening with my body, I loved it. I felt amazing about myself. And so I knew from that age, 12 years old, I'm like, yo, if I can feel like this, when I'm here, I want to do this literally for the rest of my life. So I was the person at 12 years old who knew exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So fast forward, I go to college, I get a degree in business management, minored in marketing and community health promotion. I leave West Virginia University, I moved to Atlanta because my buddy's father said, hey, if you can't make a business work in Atlanta, you can't make it work anywhere. Well, guess what? Apparently, I can't make this business work anywhere. I decided to move to Atlanta and pursue my dreams of fitness domination. And so, first job, I got a job at Bally's Health Club, right? It was membership sales. I wasn't super great at that, but I did meet a guy who wanted to open a nutrition store. One day he came to me, he goes, hey, do you want to help me open a nutrition store? I go, hell yeah! It wasn't a gym, but it was entrepreneurship. It was a business, and this was in the direction that I wanted to go. And so we opened up, honestly, it ended up being like 3 nutrition stores in the span of 2 years. Unfortunately, that was a bad situation. He and I didn't necessarily jive in terms of our ethics, and the one thing I did know back then was that I would not thrive in prison. I'd be popular, like I'd be everybody's girl, right? But I would not thrive. And so I decided to leave. But one of the interesting things that happened, when I was at the nutrition store, I met a woman, her name was Linda, and I helped Linda lose 100 pounds. And one day she came to me, she said, Aaron, I want to help other people the way that you help me. Would you be interested in opening up a personal training studio with me? And I was like, yes. At the time, I had left the nutrition store and I was working as a personal trainer at a Crunch Fitness. Long story short, we end up signing a lease on September 11th, as in like the September 11th with the planes and World Trade Center. That should have been an omen as to how this business was going to unfold. We opened this personal training studio and I was in heaven, right? I was working like 100 hours a week. I was making literally like $24,000 a year. It didn't matter. It was my dream. But along the way, something interesting happened. We thought this isn't going to scale. And so we had this idea for a group fitness facility that was tailored to everyday average people, right? Now, this was also the time when group fitness facilities like Curves were like blowing up, right? They were everywhere. And we thought we are going to start a franchise, a group fitness franchise. The name of it was called Move It. We developed all these classes. It was awesome, but we needed money. We were kind of broke. And so we decided to try to put together a business plan and then send it to people that may be interested, friends and family family and people like that, right? We raised in total $120,000. At the time, it might as well have been like $2 million. It was a huge sum of money. But one of the people that actually invested was my best friend at the time. If you guys follow Alpha M, you may have heard the story of me talk about how I got into image consulting. It was because there was this guy that I was friends with. He worked at the Weather Channel that basically one day was like, hey, what do I wear on a date? And so I was like, hey, let me take you shopping. I took him shopping, went to his closet, saw what he needed. I was like, yo, you also need to trim your nose hair and your hair is crazy. Let's go get it cut. Long story short, he goes back to work and one of his female coworkers was like, hey, you look great. What did you do? He's like, oh, there's this guy at the gym that helped me basically with my style and took me shopping. And she said, hey, will he help my husband? How much does he charge? What? Boom. That's how that idea even got started. But anyway, he was a client of mine that became one of my best friends. I trained him forever, and he was a meteorologist, and he had, at the time, more money than I knew most people to have, and he saved up a little bit of extra money. And when I presented him with this business plan of how we were going to scale these group fitness facilities called Move It across the nation, and we were all going to make like gazillions of dollars, he said, that's awesome. Let's do it. He saw the potential. He also believed in me and wanted to help me. And so he invested $25,000, which for him, making $100,000 a year was a huge sum of money. And we were excited, really excited. Now, before we actually get into the rest of the story and how it unfolds, you actually know the ending, right? You know the ending, it doesn't go well. But one thing we do need to talk about real quick is how do you actually fund your idea or your business, right? The first way is for you to save up, raise the money, and use your cash in order to do it, or credit cards or whatever. You fund it personally. Now, if you're doing what I did with Pete and Pedro, $3,000, that's what I could do, and so I could do that. But if you wanted to start something a little bit bigger or you don't have the money and you want to still do it, what are you going to do? The next option is go to your friends and family. You set up a business entity and then you go to your friends and family, probably with some type of business plan outlining, hey, if you invest this much money, you're going to get X amount of equity and this is how you're going to basically get your money back, how long it's going to take and all that, right? You put it together. And then you sell them equity in whatever entity you set up as an LLC or an S Corp or whatever it is. And they give you cash. And then they trust you. They also love you and want you to win. They want you to succeed. And so they're going to do what they're going to do in order to help facilitate that. But you need to understand, this one gets a little bit uncomfortable a little bit later if things don't work out the way that you think. All right, the other option is angel investors, right? Angel investors are basically like up to like 2 million. But the truth is, if you're just starting a business and don't really have any experience, they're not going to talk to you. Private equity, that's the big money and the fourth option. And that's what a lot of like Silicon Valley like startups, they, have a little bit of money, seed money that they get from their friends and family, then they do a little bit of something, they have a business plan, they have projections, and then they try to actually shop it around to private equity firms and raise like big, massive amounts of money. But starting out, you're probably not going to do that. Later on, you may need that if everything goes well, but that's not what we're really talking about today. Most of the people that are going to start a business, they're either going to fund it themselves or they're going to go to their friends and family to raise the money that they need to get it off the ground. Now, something else you can do, and something that we did with the business Move It, is we basically raised a little bit of money and then we went to a bank and said, hey, we've got a little bit of equity, will you lend us more money? So basically we put $100,000 in like a bank CD, they then lent us like $120,000, right? They gave us a little bit more. They also gave us a credit card and all sorts of other stuff that that didn't end up working out super great for them either. But they did have $100,000 that we ended up raising. Anyway, one of the big mistakes that people make when it comes to starting a business and raising money is A, they raise more than they need, or they don't raise enough. The other mistake, there is actually a third, is giving away way too much equity in your business for a little bit of money because you're like, yo, I'm so desperate for this money, I really need it. If I don't get it, I'm not going to be able to do it. So you're like, here's 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever it is, right? Be careful with that. In a future video, we'll talk a little bit more about like valuing your business and how to basically put some type of value on it without giving away everything. Because I also have been the dumbass that has given away equity in businesses that I should have just paid somebody to do the work. All right, my website, I Am Alpha M, it was a membership website. I ended up meeting some guys and they were like, yeah, we can help you and we just want equity. I'm like, all right, because I didn't want to spend the money at the time. I was like, yeah, this is great, right? They're going to get like 10% or 20% or whatever it was. I should have just paid the money to hire the people to do it and kept all my equity. But once again, that's another time, another story, another topic we'll discuss later. Bottom line is this. We raised money, family and friends, we went to work. Right? We opened up our first location and it was awesome, right? People were really interested and right away we're like, yo, we're gonna franchise this thing. The whole goal from day one was to create a franchisable model because franchises, you basically get a franchise fee, you also get reoccurring revenue from what they actually make. You've got to do a lot of work, right? You've got to do a lot of documentation, you've got to get all that stuff sexy and set up. Well, my business partner, Linda, she was older than me by probably, I would say, 20 years. Her business and her background was actually in technical writing, so she was really great at doing all the documentation and setting everything up in order to create the franchise package. So we used the money that we basically had in order to open this first facility and to hire and do what we needed to do. All right, $120,000 doesn't go very far. At the time, like I said, it was a lot of money for us. And so, long story short, we started trying to do this, right? And we actually had a franchise open house way before we should have because we hadn't really proven the model yet. And we weren't profitable, but we were like, hey, we're running out of money. We need to start selling these things. And so we ended up having a franchise open house and like pre-sold like a few of them. Like I think it was like 7 people were like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, let's do it. Long story short, I'm not going to go into the details, but it came out later on that one of our business partners or investors had some issues. And then it became a bigger thing. He and my business partner, Linda, started really like butting heads and we ended up running out of money. I had been taking money off of my credit cards to pay the staff personally. I was working at a golf course on weekends driving a beer cart. You know, like a beer cart like that cruises around. Normally it's like women that do it, like little like 18-year-olds are like, hi, would you like to buy a beer? Right? That was me in my 30s doing that. Just to put gas in my car and to give my then girlfriend, now wife, a little bit of extra money. All right, we had legal fees, we had debt. By the time I filed bankruptcy, which I'll talk about in a video very soon. I'll talk about what happened with my bankruptcy and how that kind of affected me. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like debt and buy everything cash now. At that point that everything was exploding, I was literally going to friends of mine and being like, hey, can I borrow $2,000? Can I borrow like $500 just so that I could pay my staff on payday? It was the end, and we knew it was the end. And we had to make the call. We needed to shut down. Myself and my business partner were on the hook for all of the money, which is why we ended up having to file bankruptcy. I'll tell you that story later. We were done. It was over. And I knew that I had to do something. I knew that I had to go tell my best friend who invested $25,000 that I lost all his money. And I went into the little conference room I had there at the facility, and I sat on the floor. I remember the carpet, what it felt like. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I called him. He answered the phone, and I couldn't speak. All he heard was me sobbing. And all I remember him saying was, it's okay. I didn't even tell him. I couldn't even get it out, but he knew I was calling. And he just said, it's okay. And it's funny because if somebody would like yell or scream or get upset, like that's easier to deal with than kindness, but because he was my friend, he said, it's okay. And that was that. If you're not ready or prepared to make that phone call, you shouldn't start a business, period. You know, nobody goes into business or entrepreneurship thinking about that, right? But that is a reality and a possibility. If things don't work out or you don't do something right or whatever, or just the universe or COVID or whatever, like there are a lot of variables that you don't have control over. Sorry. But The story does have a happy ending. A few years ago, when I started to become a little bit more successful, I paid him back. And I remember where I was driving to Florida with my wife, and I said, I got to pay Steve back. And she said, of course. And I called him and I said, hey man, I just wanted to say thank you for believing in me, and I'm sorry for losing your money, and I'm sorry that it didn't return like millions of dollars to you, but I'd like to give you your money back that you invested. And he was very thankful. And you know, everybody that I tell that story to, people are like, oh, well, it's an investment. They know the risk. You don't have to do that. And for me, yes, I did. They say that you should never invest more than you're comfortable losing. I personally am not comfortable losing any money, but you've got to be able to endure the loss. And I think that's really the best takeaway. It's not about being comfortable. You never want to lose money, of course not. But can you sustain yourself? Can you endure it? Does it derail you like financially for the rest of your life and you're filing bankruptcy? Then you should not do it. But if you can afford to lose it and risk it, doing something great or helping somebody or in an idea that you think is awesome, then go for it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this story because it's something that I remember, as you can tell, like it was yesterday. It was the single hardest thing that I've ever done professionally, and I just want you to be aware that it's a potential. Hopefully not. Hopefully your business wildly successful because you are much smarter than me. You also watch Alpha Empire videos, which you need to drop me one of these if you haven't, and also subscribe. It's free. Gentlemen, thank you for watching. This felt good.